detained once again in a couple of hours' time. Are you surprised by this turn of events?
Well, Djokovic is trying to challenge this over the weekend, to challenge his right to compete in the Australian Open. It's been such a fast-moving week of developments, not only in the Australian case in terms of granting him the visa in the end with the court ruling at the start of the week, and now the executive order coming from the Australian government to cancel the visa, but also so many doubts raised over the veracity of Djokovic's forms, the information he provided to the Australian authorities over his positive test that gained him this exemption. And it's cast so many doubts about the right for Djokovic to be in the country and to have been granted this exemption in a country which has some of the strictest requirements for entry in the world, in Melbourne, which has been one of the most locked down cities during the pandemic. And of course, this is an Australian Open where all competitors are being told to get vaccinated to get into the country, or they've really got to provide these exemptions. And the decision from the minister certainly saying that Djokovic has undermined the public faith really in all these health procedures.
I mean, you know, it's such a divisive issue, as we've seen not only with Djokovic right now, but other athletes as well. How damaging has this all have been for Djokovic, if it has been at all?
So damaging, you just have to sense some of the reaction in Australia. Someone who's being allowed into the country, while many have struggled to, even Australians have struggled to get back home over the last couple of years due to those border restrictions. And at the heart of it is the fact Djokovic is not vaccinated, something that he did acknowledge for the first time fully this week, and that is his personal choice. But with those personal choices in this pandemic comes the right for sports bodies and countries to prohibit entry, as we've seen in the US with the athletes you've mentioned, with Kyrie Irving not being able to play in New York for his home side due to the need for players to be fully vaccinated to play in those arenas. And indeed, the questions that were raised over Aaron Rodgers, over his vague language, over saying he was immunised, and then it turned out he wasn't at all in terms of being vaccinated. And in the world of sport, there's been a lot of distrust that has been propagated about vaccines amongst players, and also some concerns raised about not wanting to have anything injected at all in terms of this vaccine. Yet, as we've seen so many places around the world, it's helped to save lives and to reduce serious infection.
I mean, as you're saying, you know, these athletes are saying that it is their personal choice, but also a large there's another side to the story as well, which is the impact it'll have on advertisers and sponsors as well. It must be of great concern to them.
And I think the greater concern in the Djokovic case is the way he's misled people, and he had to acknowledge that this week in terms of his own conduct. Even if he isn't vaccinated, he did not follow the rules in Serbia. He was out and about when he'd already had a positive test. He went to do an interview with the French newspaper L'Equipe. He said he wore a mask apart from when he was being pictured. But this is a world that we've got used to the fact that if you test positive, you need to isolate for varying numbers of days in different countries. And this is not some young player, some inexperienced player in Djokovic. He's one of the world's leading players, someone who vastly experienced and mature to know what the rules and regulations should be. And that is really what has caused so much concern about the ever-evolving nature of this story and about the trust in Djokovic to provide accurate information, particularly when he's already been granted an exemption that, of course, is being challenged over just what he provided for that. And the fallout is interesting. The sponsors, his sponsors, are being very coy. No criticism yet from his sponsors publicly, which obviously should help him in the longer term. But going forward, questions over entry to various other countries that might have vaccine requirements for entry to be exempt from things like quarantine.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much, Rob Harris, for speaking to us from London.
Good to speak.